Yeah, welcome to the Garden Show every Saturday morning, this time since 1983, Ken.
Yeah.
In Kelowna on AM 1150, and we welcome our gardening friends in Victoria and Penticton. So, here we are. Well, warm weather, good tomato weather.
Oh, yeah, the tomatoes are starting to just leap forward, and the fruit's starting to plump up, and things are showing up. You know, there's issues that are starting to show, which happens every year.
Oh, we're going to talk about a few issues. Well, let's get the tip and the plants. Tips and plants of the week out of the way first before we start yabbering. My tip of the week is Cotinus cogurgia is a beautiful large shrub. This is the smoke tree. It's when it's in flower, of course, it earns its name smoke tree. However, if the blooms are allowed to come to fruition, they're quite messy and will spread some seeds around as well. Trim off those smoky plumes now to avoid this. The blooming season is just about done for them. Now they're going to get messy. Prune them off, and that helps encourage new growth for next year. Long tip of the week, but it's a good one. My plant of the week is Ligularia the Rocket, the nice tall Ligularia.
Oh, it's
and
beautiful.
It's in bloom right now. It's a gorgeous plant.
Yeah, lovely.
Yeah.
Very nice choice. All right, I also have a tip and a plant this week, and my tip of the week is that the watering we are doing now, due to the heat, it means we're going to be flushing a lot of the nutrients out of our plants, especially our planters, annual planters, that sort of thing. So just remember that as it gets hotter, the plants need more food, so you need to feed more. But also, when you're watering a lot, you're washing out a lot of that nutrient as well. So there's two double situations going on there. So just remember that as it gets hotter, keep on feeding. I like to feed a little bit in every single watering. All right, now my plant of the week this week is the Yucca filamentosa, the yucca plants, which are often called Adam's needle. That's another name for them. They're in bloom right now in the gardens, and they're one of the most drought-tolerant plants that you can get for almost any garden. They just survive just about anything. They're actually a little difficult to get rid of once you get them, but they're good. They're different than other plants. They just have a totally different look in the landscape. So yuccas can be a nice addition to the garden, and at this time of year, they're putting out their 6-foot-tall bloom. That's a mass of blooms. I guess it's called it's like a candelabra almost of beautiful white flowers. Beautiful plant, and it's worth growing. That's my tips and plants for this week. Remember to check growercoach.com and Grower Coach on YouTube.
Ken, just to start off the show here too, a sad weck. R.J. Bennett has passed away.
Oh,
R.J. was a great friend of ours. I felt so close to him because he was close to my dad.
Yeah.
My dad used to plow the garden at W.A.C. Bennett's home on Ethel. Mm-hmm. Used to plow lots of gardens, but that's one in particular. And he would take R.J. as a little guy, a little boy, throw him up on the horse while he's plowing the garden, and RJ's riding the workhorses. Punch and Dolly were the names of the horses, and RJ remembers the name of them, and so the chats we had were very, very intimate to me, and very sad. Good life, long life. At 94 he was, and he beat my dad. My dad was 93 when he passed. Anyway, that's our contribute to RJ and the family, Lois and her family. Our condolences go out. Lois is a heck of a gardener. She's got a huge garden over there, and I enjoy going every year. Anyway, there you go. It's a process of life, as my dad would say, and RJ, rest in peace. You talked about fertilizing and how important that is, Ken. I can't emphasize enough how much I enjoy my Siphon X injectors.
Yeah.
I got one in the front yard, one in the backyard. You fill up a 5-gallon bucket with 3 cups of 20-20-20 in the 5-gallon bucket. That's the concentrate.
Yep.
That makes 75, because it's 15 to 1, 75 gallons of finished product out of the end of the hose. You just have to remember that hose can't be any longer than 50 feet.
Oh, yeah.
You can't be running it into trickle systems because there's not enough. You got to have that flow. You got to have the flow to make this guy work. It's a very It's a very simple injector. It's not like our big Smith injectors that we used to carry or have in the greenhouse, which you could have a trickle and it would still inject, right?
Yeah.
And that's why it worked so well in the greenhouse. But boy, oh boy, I went and, last week I talked about having bought a hose, paid about $50-$60 for it, right?
Right.
And it was a piece of CRAP. It was bad. Mm-hmm. It was a bad hose. It was kinking like crazy. So I took it back and I got a $100 hose, and it's a beauty.
It's better. There you go.
It's a beauty. $100, I know, but it's worth it because I hate a kinky hose.
Oh, and as a gardener, like you're always dragging hoses. It's one of the key most important tools that you have in the garden that you use every day.
Right. You got to get what you pay for. So I've taken my old hose and I've extended it onto my greenhouse hose, which is only about 15 feet. Mm-hmm. And I've got an extension now. So I can go around with injectors in the greenhouse. But now I've added enough to not quite 50 feet, but I can go out and I can water my plants. And I went through all my 15 tomatoes in pots. Mm-hmm. I went through all my tropicals and my succulents outside in this heat. They just loved a nice drink of triple 20.
Yeah.
And I still had in the bottom of the bucket about 3 inches of stuff.
Yeah.
So that's the beauty of that. Mm-hmm. Anyway, it's a lot better than putting a tablespoon into a gallon watering can and walking around with that.
Yeah.
And repeating that over and over again.
Yeah. So, yeah. And even I go one step maybe above that, mixing it in the watering can, but to have a big bucket that I fill up and then fill it up with 20 gallons or 30 gallons of water and do the mixture, and then use my watering jugs. But it's still carrying around those watering jugs. They're not the lightest thing.
But you're absolutely right, Ken. That food feeding is so essential to keep your plants looking strong and healthy.
Yeah, and like I say, at this time of year, you're watering quite regularly, so you're often washing out any nutrients that might have been there. And the hotter it gets, the quicker those nutrients release and sort of discharge. Mm-hmm. So no matter what it says, you'll see some of the slow-release fertilizer products. It'll say, this lasts for 90 days. And you go like, no, it doesn't, not in this heat.
Not because in the heat and you're washing through.
And we're talking about the Okanagan here. I mean, we're getting days where it's getting hot, 36 degrees Celsius.
When I was working on the show this morning, I'm up at 5:30 I'm up and working away on planning what we're going to talk about on the show. And it was 20 degrees in Kelowna in my backyard, 26 in the greenhouse already, and it's 14 in Victoria and 22 in Penticton. Highs of 35 in Kelowna are predicted, 27 in Victoria, and 35 in Penticton. So it just shows you the Okanagan heat is very specific and very it's quite something.
It's intense, for sure, and that increases evaporation rate. So this is where I think a lot of times the public doesn't really understand that. How they people are saying, we don't want the temperature to be up by half a degree or something, and it's like it makes a huge difference to especially plants. Where it just dehydrates them, it sucks the moisture right out of them. So then, not only is the earth drier, but the plants are drier, and that makes them more flammable, of course. So it's a real catch-22. When the temperatures go up, everything dries out, and it dries out fast.
And another thing we have to be concerned about here in the Okanagan versus the coastal areas is sun scald on your tomatoes.
Yeah,
I've experienced that quite a bit. Sun scald on my tomato plants, on my tomatoes, and the tomato itself turns white.
Yeah.
And so I'm setting up a little bit of a shade situation this year for my tomatoes.
Yeah, that's a great idea. And I have shade cloth as well for my garden. And this is exactly the type of temperatures like here in the Okanagan. This is what we need here is a little bit of shade material. For that afternoon sun, it just gets so intense. So I like to take the full sun in the morning if I can, and then just buffer that afternoon sun. So thanks for the reminder, Don. I got to get that up because I kind of forgot.
Hot and the tomatoes are ripening.
Yeah, my shade cloth's sitting right there. I just got to get it up and hanging.
We're going to have to take that first break. We do invite your calls, 250-862-2525 in the Kelowna area, and 1-888-780-4273 is a free call from when you're calling from out of town, from Victoria or from Penticton or anywhere online. just one little tidbit before we had sort of a get together last night, and somebody says, "What has 4 wheels and flies?" A garbage truck. We'll take a short break. We'll be back with more of the Garden Show after this short break. We are back with you, and I got to get used to that new entry because, after 40 years of the other one, it's a little bit difficult to go.
Yeah, it doesn't trigger you.
But no, it's very nice, very nicely done, and we're quite pleased. So lots of things going on right now. One of the things that's creeping up fairly quickly here now is BER. Blossom end rot.
Yes, I've seen that around.
Yeah,
and in some cases really bad.
Yeah.
So we it's a preventative thing, and today. It seems like we're talking a lot about tomato disorders because the tomatoes are really taking off.
Yep.
And so you talked about sun scald, which is something again we suffer here in the Okanagan. Because you get a big white patch on the side, or in some cases the whole fruit literally turns white. But in this case, it's the black rotting spot on the bottom of the tomato or on the blossom end of the tomato. And it happens for a bunch of different reasons, but it's a calcium deficiency mainly. And that calcium deficiency causes a weakening of the cell walls in the tomato plant. So when those little cell walls, right at the tip where the fruit is, where the flower is where the cells are dividing, and they're dividing quite rapidly. So as they're dividing, they're needing the calcium to create the new cells, and of course they just run out. And once they run out, they're creating these cells that are very thin walls on the end, and some of them even may not have any walls. And so what happens, that just means it's a spot where the fungus can infect. It can come in and start to rot the fruit right on the end, and that's just a common thing. And so there are several different treatments you can do, but mainly it is applying calcium directly onto the plant as a foliar feeding, and soak the entire plant top to bottom, including the fruit. And you've often said that, Don, is to get that right on the small fruits as they're forming when they're young, and
the size of a golf ball.
Yeah.
Except for cherry tomatoes. But cherry tomatoes don't seem to get blossom end rot.
No, they don't. No. It's just, maybe it's a size thing. I don't know. Yeah. But it's not very common on cherry tomatoes.
But it's not a pathogen. It's a abiotic problem.
Yeah, the pathogen comes in after.
Eventually,
secondary. Yeah. But so the calcium, food grade calcium is what's used, and you pick that up at your local garden centers. You can use vitamins as well that are calcium. That are Ca on the label. That's your calcium. That's food grade calcium. And if it's good for humans, it's good for the plant. But other than that, that's about the way that's my recommendation. I do know that people do use sometimes like powdered milk, that sort of thing. The only thing with that is from my standpoint, is that it's milk. It goes bad and it gets infected with bacteria and all kinds of, who knows what. So I'm a little bit cautious using those products, just spraying them all over our food and then having that go rotten on the food and stuff. So for me, I just stick with the food grade.
Yeah, you can buy, like, there was a thing called Stop Rot.
Yeah, Stop.
And it was a calcium supplement, and there are others as well. But there must be a liquid calcium available at the health food stores and the groceries.
Calcium. I wonder, but that was one of the products that I think years ago we used to have. It was like a stop rot type of product for tomatoes specifically, and it was a liquid form, and you would have to measure it out, and had a little cap on the top, like a cough syrup cap.
Yeah.
And you'd pour it in and mix it with your water, and you sprayed it right on, and so liquid formulation would be probably better, just superior, faster acting, right?
Yeah. That's your blossom end rot story right there. And I mean, there will be calls on blossom end rot for sure. It's one of the very common
tomato
problems.
Disorders, Yeah, it's one of those things, like you say, it's abiotic. That just means it's sort of environmental. It has to do with your soil conditions and the temperatures, too, play a role.
Yeah, right. You're absolutely right, Ken, about deer and sorbus, the mountain ash. Deer walking down Rhonda Crescent. Very seldom do we see deer on Rhonda Crescent, but here's this beautiful Bambi walking down Rhonda Crescent. Passed by a bunch of yards. Walked my neighbor across the street. First thing it did was veer right in. It could recognize a mountain ash from a distance, and he walked in, started chewing away on the mountain ash.
Yep, that's one of their favorite foods. And they're a great tree to grow because they're so drought tolerant, and there are many species that are native, to Canada and to North America. But that's also one of those things that they do recognize it as natural browse. Yeah. So they might go there for lunch.
What do you think of the golden colored berried mountain ash? That's one I noticed the other day that what the city has planted. Yeah. And it looks quite attractive, actually.
I think all the mountain ashes are beautiful, but that's unique, with the yellow berry. There's a lot. There's a white berried one too.
Oh, is there?
Yeah, but it's not very common. That's for sure. There's a lot of different sorbus.
My favorite though is decora, the sorbus decora, which is a showy mountain ash.
Yeah, they are showy.
Its form is so nice. That tree across the street that I look at every morning, I will look out the front window, and that tree at all times of the year gives me pleasure. In the wintertime, of course, it's just you see the berries. In the fall color on the foliage is fabulous. In the spring, when the blooms come out, it's all beautifully massive white blooms. Yeah. And right now, the berries are just starting to form and turn yellow or turn orange, red. Yeah. And they are. It is a fabulous tree. Yeah. But the nice thing about it is its form. It looks so uniform and well branched. Yeah. And so every time someone moves into that home, which has been about 3 or 4 times since we've been,
you go
there,
tell them that they can't cut it down.
Don't touch that tree. Don't have somebody come in and top the tree. The worst thing when you see a tree business, a pruning business, and on the truck they say we top trees. Yeah. Question that a little bit.
Well, turn and run. Yeah.
Tree topping. Now there's tree topping, and then there's pollarding. Pollarding is a different story.
Pruning, like you can do selective removal of branches to reduce the height of a tree, but the number one rule in ornamental tree pruning is that we prune trees to make them better, not smaller. Yeah, yeah. Because you put the right tree in the right spot and just let her go.
Yeah, you don't have to.
No, if it does get too tall and you're starting to collect airplanes and kites and stuff, you might just remove the thing. But it's nice to just let the tree be itself. It knows how to grow. It knows what shape it needs to be. But sometimes people put trees in the wrong spot, and then it does take a very highly skilled pruning person, arborist of some sort, who really understands how to selectively remove the branches to just shrink that into its space. And timing is important. We talk about summer pruning, and we're in that zone right now. So we talk about summer pruning and it seemingly controlling effect, and it's really the tree just doesn't respond as much in the summertime, and we're in that right now.
Years ago, I was at a pruning session, and a gal was the instructor. I forget when it was. It was many, many years ago, probably 30 or 40 years ago, and she was explaining how to maintain the integrity of the tree, and she called it drop pruning. Now, I've used that term again, drop pruning, but basically what it is pruning down to an outward-facing branch that's at least 1/3 of the size of the one that you remove. You see, if you remove this, you've got to have an outward-facing branch that's at least 1/3 of the size of the one you remove. And that outward-facing branch will start growing properly, and you'll end up with that nice form. You're not topping the tree that way. Yeah. However, I mentioned the word pollard, and pollarding is done quite successfully on certain species. Not all species respond to pollarding, but species such as the London plane trees, They're constantly pollarded in Britain and Holland and whatnot. Some of the pollarding I saw there was actually so unique. One was it was a London plane tree. No, it wasn't. It was a carpinus. It was a
hornbeam. Yeah,
hornbeam, and it had come up, and they had created this umbrella. Flat through trellising, and the tree came up, and that it formed this patio of coverage, just like having a pergola of some sort. But no, it was the hornbeam that was giving the coverage. It was pruned that way, and they would get up on top on ladders and reach in with pole pruners and just prune it flat, and it was beautifully done.
So
beautifully done.
These techniques are acceptable. They have to. It has to be done properly, because a lot of people think that means just hacking the branch of the tree tops off,
right.
And that's where topping trees is quite a dangerous thing. But to carefully and skillfully pollard a tree so that it develops these huge knuckles on the ends of the branches is the key. And those knuckles are part of the natural habit of the tree, and it stores energy for over winter time, and it actually is relatively healthy for the tree. The issue is the expense of it, because if you think pruning a tree every 5 years is expensive, try pruning it every single year for its entire life. Right. Now that gets expensive. And now, like this tree you're talking about, where they come in several times a year and hedge trim it, or and that's acceptable, but it is
a municipal
expensive.
thing. Ken, we're going to take a short break. We do invite your calls, 250-862-2525 to get through to us today. 1-888-780-4273 if you're calling from out of town, like in Victoria or Penticton, or anywhere listening online. We'll be back with The Garden Show after this short break. Well, we're going to get right back to you here, and Dan Bruce has joined us, and Dan visited our garden the other day and brought in a sample of something that was pretty gross looking. I don't know. It's the first time I've seen it here in the Okanagan. It may be more common in the milder, damper areas. It's a fungus. It's called black knot on prunus, and it was very interesting, Dan. Nice you could bring that in to show me.
Well, I'm glad you thought it was nice. I thought it was kind of gross.
Yeah, well, you got to keep an eye open for that. See if it's got any more of those on there, because I'm just reading about it. It's quite contagious. You haven't got anything growing on your elbow or anything like that, eh?
On my elbow. Oh, that's what that thing is, isn't it?
Anyway, it was quite something. People can Google black knot on prunus, and that's what Dan Bruce brought me the other day as a gift. Anyway, Dan, what have you got to say this morning?
There isn't any more of that on that tree.
Oh, good, good.
It was really quite a small plant. It was maybe 10 feet tall maximum. And I cut the whole branch off and disposed of it.
Perfect.
So, but it doesn't seem to be a big problem.
Yeah, but it'd be interesting to see how it manifests, and
if it does.
If it does, and we hope it doesn't, because that's an ugly darn thing. It was not pleasant to look at.
Well, anyway, something else that manifested itself. You remember you gave me, back in the spring, you gave me that pot with a tobacco plant.
Yes. How's it looking?
Well, it's now about 7 feet tall.
Oh, my.
Mine's getting close to that, yeah. Is it in bloom?
Yes.
Yes, yeah, mine's blooming now, too.
Trumpet-shaped pale pink flowers right at the top.
And you can see it's very similar to the Nicotiana that we plant as an ornamental as well.
Yes.
Quite similar, yeah.
Anyway, it's certainly has grown. And
well, maybe we can get the industry going again here.
Well, there used to be a tobacco industry in Kelowna for, about 20 some years. 1900 on. Yeah.
Well, my dad talked about it, and he actually smoked some of that. It was called Kelowna Pride.
Yes, and it came in the gold-colored tins.
Right.
And then there was also a reddish-colored paper package.
But it sure grows well here. I mean,
it does.
Yeah.
I think the industry failed because the tobacco industry in the East didn't want it to work.
Yeah, I think that was it. It was kind of political and whatnot.
And also, I think there was some skullduggery in the finances of the industry here in Kelowna.
Mm-hmm.
So it didn't materialize. But one thing that was interesting is that they brought tobacco workers who are familiar with tobacco and growing it and all the processes. They brought them. They were Chinese, and they brought them from Cuba.
Oh, my goodness.
Which is obviously where you would go to get tobacco expertise. But the Kelowna Museum has a copy of a newspaper printed in Chinese in Havana.
Oh, isn't that cool?
And when I was working at the museum, I came across this and thought, well, that's odd. And then, of course, the penny dropped, and I realized that, well, obviously that's how it got here.
Yeah, and I'm sure there are different varieties, but the one that we have, I got from our good friend Louis, who phones into the garden show once in a while. Great guy, and he gave me the seed last in the spring, and so I grew some seedlings. You got one of them. Ken's got one, I think, and I got to come to Donnie has a couple, and of course I have a nice one growing in our yard, and it is getting close to 7 feet. And nice big leaves on it. But I wonder if there are different varieties of the actual tobacco plant. I mean, I'm sure there would be.
Well, almost certainly. I mean, I haven't looked into it, but usually with these things, cultivated plants like that, yes, there are usually several varieties. And some more adapted to the conditions here as opposed to the more humid year-round growing season in Cuba.
Yeah, it's a different growing season. There's no doubt about it. It's more humid and it's longer. But I haven't consumed tobacco for many numerous decades, really, and so I'm not about to start now. But it would be interesting to process this and see what kind of tobacco. I don't want to touch it because it is an addicting material, and I don't want to touch it. But on the other hand, I know a few smokers, and I'll maybe try to cure some of this and see what we can do. Make some smoke.
Well, it's something that can be tried. But I don't understand the process of curing it.
No,
I do know that it's not just a matter of drying the leaf.
No, that's right. But also, though, it is a nice-looking plant. It's a very majestic plant. I posted it when it was a little younger. I posted a picture of it on Facebook in bloom. I should post another one now that it's up there in bloom. Because people are quite interested.
You remember when we were walking around at Gushigan, there was a plant of it coming up. In one of the beds at Gushigan. It looked to me as though it was an accidental, rather than having been planted there. But that's definitely what it was.
Anyway, it's interesting to have that kind of plant in the yard. Something different. Did you have something you just wanted to say before we leave, Dan? Because we're gonna move on here.
Well, the heat is certainly making things move in the garden. My chayote squash has now decided to grow.
Yeah, they need the heat.
I planted it a long time ago, and it produced some leaves and then just sat there while the nights were so cold. But now it's really moving. So it's probably going to meet the scarlet runner beans on the veranda roof before too long here. And, Unfortunately, the growing season isn't long enough to get any chayote squash from it, but still, it's an interesting thing to grow.
Why not? Might as well do something different, Dan, and I know you like to do that. We're going to have to move on here, but I appreciate your call, and I appreciated that visit the other day. It was nice, except I didn't show you the Pachypodium. And the Pachypodium I'm a little concerned about. Not that it's looking unhealthy per se. The leaves are green, everything's looking good, but they're not growing. And when I got that plant from you, those leaves were a foot long, and now they're only about 5 inches long, and they're just stalled. Is that what's going on?
Don't really know, but it might be that it just didn't like the cold conditions.
Yeah.
And now the conditions have changed.
It might just explode.
You might find that it will start to send out bigger leaves.
On the watering aspect, I really let it go quite dry between waterings. Is that the appropriate thing?
Well, as long as I've had it, when it was in full leaf, I watered it quite frequently.
Okay. I maybe want to step that up a bit.
Maybe step up the watering a bit.
Yeah.
But do it gradually. Otherwise, you might find it suddenly said, oh, no, too much.
We don't want root rot to set in.
No.
Mm-hmm.
Dan, we appreciate your call, and we will talk to you next week. And drop in again and have a look at that Pachypodium. I mean, let's face it, you've got some emotional attachments to it. So, there you go. Take care.
Right.
Okay, bud.
Yeah.
Take care.
Thanks, Dan.
Bye-bye
Take care. Bye-bye.
Okay. We are harvesting cucumbers now, Ken.
Yeah, that's amazing. It's early.
Have you got any?
I've just got one that's about 8 inches long, and it's all curled up into a blob. It's not very good.
I don't know why the early ones like that were curled, but now they're smartening up.
Maybe just the size of the plant. I think that one is right on the bottom. Hard to say. Sometimes you get an insect or something on there that'll try rasping it, and that'll affect the shape of it. But we do know that with
there's
those long English
strips around, so maybe that was when it was very young. That's all it takes.
I have lots of thrips.
That's all it takes.
Yeah, and I know with English cucumbers that, like in the greenhouse industry, they always used to say, don't let them pollinate, because if they pollinate, they'll curl. If you want them straight, you got to not avoid the pollination. But I don't know. That information is from 1982 when I first started growing hothouse cucumbers and tomatoes.
And it says right on the package of my Carmen cucumbers, do not plant with any other cucumbers. Yeah. Don't plant close to any other cucumbers.
And that's probably why.
My neighbors have some cucumbers. I think I'm going to have to build a wall.
Well, I have a whole... several different types of cucumbers all on the same trellis. So.
Yeah, there you go.
But, if they got a curve in them, they still taste good. So what the heck.
If you've got anything on your mind, folks, gardening-wise, and you want to just talk to Ken and I, we are here to answer your gardening questions. If you've got anything to report in your garden, something different, something successful, whatever, just let's chat. I've always looked at this show as being like standing at the back fence, two neighbors chatting back and forth, and that's all it is, and we appreciate your calls when you do call. 250-862-2525 to get through in Kelowna, 1-888-780-4273 if you're calling from out of town or anywhere online. We will be back with The Garden Show after this short break. And we are back with you. I'm going to get used to that and know when I should stop. Or talk and not talk, and we'll figure it out. Donna is joining us. Good morning, Donna. Nice to have you on the show.
Good morning. Help. I had a beautiful dahlia growing in a pot on the deck, and I'd move it in out of the sun in the afternoon, and I assume I've overwatered it, and it's just hanging. It's just terrible.
Ooh.
Got drainage?
Yeah.
Good drainage?
Yeah, it drained through. Yeah.
Yeah, well, it's either one or the other. So it's either excessive water or underwatering. It's a common sort of thing. Like, for example, I have a planter, and the hole in the bottom became plugged somehow. Like, it was draining fine initially, but then it stopped draining, and the whole planter filled right up with water. And I walked by the planter and I looked and it was all wilted. So I poured about a gallon of water into it and I realized that it just topped it right to the edge. And I thought, oh no. So I dumped the thing over and I poured it all out and I fixed the drain so that it would drain again. But that was a root rot issue the plant is now starting to recover. It's been about a week or so. But on the other hand, when it's hot every day the plants will get very, very dry and they can get to the point where they're in extreme drought stress, and we might water it and think we've caught it. But generally what happens in that case is that when you do give them a good heavy watering, they should spring back up, even if they're all crispy. But that crispy leaves would be the signature of a plant drying out. So brown, crunchy leaves on the bottom, that sort of thing. Do you have any of that?
No.
There you go.
They're all green. They're still green. I'm sure it never dried out. But I obviously, I guess it. I don't know. It. I have it on a rolling trolley thing, and I had a plate underneath it, and so the water was coming through.
Did you now? Is this a new plant to you this year, or did you overwinter it?
Overwintered it.
You overwintered it, and so and the tuber looked good. The tuberous root looked good
The best ever that I saved them. All of them have grown just beautifully. I wrapped them in saran wrap, and it just worked really well.
Perfect. Now, what about the soil? Did you use new soil, and is it good potting soil?
Yeah.
Okay. And so you planted it, and it started to grow, and it did okay?
It's about 3 feet tall in the pot.
Yeah.
Oh, my goodness. Okay, well, something drastically is happening to it to have it wilt like that and collapse.
Yeah. Will it come back?
Well, what I would do is dig down into the soil and just have a peek at what's going on down there, because you want to see some root activity. You don't want to see brown, rotting roots. You want to see some white roots down there coming off the tuber. And that's important. If you don't see those, then you've got an issue. Now, what you might want to do in that case, because it is a tuberous root, you can cut the thing right off. If it's really wilted in that, you might as well just cut it right off, lift the root back out, clean it up, have a look at it, see what it's looking like, feel it, press it, and see if it's rotting, if it's soft or whatever, and just do some examining like that, because it's early enough in the season that you can restart the thing, but something catastrophic is happening there. Dahlia shouldn't do that.
Yeah.
I don't know, because like I say, big deal if it wilted a little bit, and then but I've been trying to be very careful to make sure they do have water.
Yeah.
And but oh boy, that would be a major job to do, because this is a huge or fairly big ceramic pot, and to get all that out of there, I don't know.
Well, you can at least dig down in and see what's going on. Just kind of dig down beside the.
Yeah, visual inspection, or even if you're digging your hand down into the root system and you can get it down there and you can feel around, you'll know if you come into powder dry soil, then you know, there's a pocket of dry soil. That could be an issue. Then it needs to be heavily soaked, and that would be the best case scenario. And then you feel the roots. If you can feel a tuber somewhere and squeeze it a bit and find that it's actually quite solid and hard, that means it's good. There are, because it's a big fleshy root, it's almost like a potato, there are insects that can get in, and they're grubs, sometimes like a wireworm, or sometimes a June bug or a chinch bug or something. There's these larvae that can get in, and they love to eat those roots, and if they start to chew into a root, it's definitely going to wilt, that's for sure. So investigation is required.
Oh, brother.
Well,
the thing is too, it's been up on the deck the whole time. So would I still get bugs in it?
Oh, sure.
Yeah, they fly. All these grubs that we're talking about are all flying insects. They'll fly in and lay eggs.
And then So you got to check that. It's a matter of doing a little research and checking it out.
So the best thing would be to try and dump the pot out then and repot.
Don't dump it out unless you have to. Get your hand down one side of the pot, dig down with your hand, take some soil out, just the size of your hand. Keep digging down until you get about 8 inches, maybe 10 inches deep on the side of the pot, and then start working your way into underneath the root or within those tubers. You might come across a tuber and you can check it.
Mm.
It's a little bit of surgery.
If you did the saran wrap process, those tubers that you did over the winter couldn't have been that huge, right?
No.
You see, so like Ken said, you can get right down beside it and dig into that nice potting soil. Do some exploratory surgery.
Oh, no. I thought you were going to give me an easy fix.
Well, the easy fix is, we have to know more information. In other words, you have to do some, is the tuber solid? Do you see white roots? Do you find dry pockets? All those things. There's only two things that will cause them to wilt, and that is lack of water or too much.
Yeah. But that's what I'm thinking. I overwatered it, and it was so hot or something. I don't know. Would that be bad for it, obviously?
Well, overwatering wouldn't hurt it unless it was sitting in water for a length of time.
Because it definitely has a hole in the bottom of the pot.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. But you don't want it sitting in water. That's the key thing.
No.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
So I shouldn't try giving it some more water then?
We'll check it first.
Yeah, we got to do that checking.
When soil becomes dry,
avoid the checking.
when soil becomes dry, it repels water, so you can't get it wet again. And this is one thing that does happen sometimes: is we water a little bit, and then we water a little bit, and the water tends to not want to soak in, and it runs right through out the bottom right away. And that's a sign that it's so dry that it's not even going to take water. And that requires submersion, where you actually take the pot and either repetitive waterings or submersion to get the water to get into that.
I'm sure it didn't get that dry.
Yeah.
In fact, I like I say, I don't even know if it ever did. Like, it wasn't wilting because it was dry when I watered it. But anyhow.
Well, here's the deal. All you're doing is stabbing in the dark if you keep watering and not watering. You got to find out really what's going on, and that's why you have to dig down and get on your knees, put a little pillow down so you don't have to kneel on the hot deck. If you know what I mean. Anyway, we're good.
Okay, one more quick question.
Okay, quickie.
When should lilacs be trimmed?
Right after they bloom is a good time.
Yep. That's good.
Yep.
Yeah, and just selectively pruning is usually good, unless it's one of the dwarf forms where you can hedge trim them if you have to.
Yeah.
Believe it or not, we live in a gated community, and I don't know, the gardeners say the other day, I said, "Look, it's getting too late to be pruning the lilacs." "Oh no, we don't do them till the fall." And I said, "No, you don't. You do them now, or it's too late already." Almost.
That's true. Yeah, there you go.
Yeah, I'm
the
right.
old Black
You're
and Deckers.
right.
Get the Black and Deckers out.
Good, though.
Yeah, you betcha.
Thank you, guys.
Okay, dear.
Yep, thanks for calling.
Thanks for the calling. And, so we're getting close to that mid-show break. We do invite your calls. We love to hear from you, and there's lots of gardening action going on right now. And if you have any issues, give us a call, because no issue is unworthy of our addressing to the issue. And we can do that. Lots more to talk about, though. It is right in the heat of gardening season, and we are at it. I'm going to start planting a few more things now. I've got some spinach going in. I've got some. I'm going to try doing, Ken? Sowing in the garden some Brussels sprouts.
Oh,
not sowing like as in SEW. It's SOW. Putting in some Brussels sprouts just for fun. Put in some seeds, Brussels sprout seeds, and see what happens.
See how big they get, and see, because typically you can do those right around the end of May, and this is still okay. Yeah. Let's try.
See what happens. Okay, we are now getting to the point where we're going to take that mid-show break. Give us a call. We'll be back with the Garden Show after this short break. There you go. We are back on the air with you. It is the Garden Show. Been here since 1983. It's hard to believe. I only look 40 years old. I don't know how that can happen. But anyway, very sad time right now in the family. Pets are part of the family. There's no question about it. And our son-in-law, Nick, has a dog, and with Lindsay. 15-year-old Keela was getting not well, and they had a little ceremony last night and had her put to sleep. Nice way to do it at home. The dog and everybody at home doing that. The vet was kind enough to come out and do that. Very sad, and I just want to give my condolences to Lindsay and Nick and everyone involved with Keela saying goodbye. So Keela and Tika will now be up there chasing balls and swimming in the cool waters in doggy heaven. There you go. Yeah, have it. 250-862-2525 to get through to us. We are here to answer your gardening questions, and that's what we can do. However, if we want us to talk about our, we've got two guys here that have been doing this now for a combination of probably a century. Well, not quite there, but a lot of years. Ken and I have been doing this.
Probably.
And we've learned a lot. And I'll tell you what, we've learned just as much from doing this show and listening to your questions and answers. We listen very consistently, and we appreciate that kind of input as well. But we have Sylvia joining us. Good morning, Sylvia.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Hello?
Yeah.
Hi. So we built a brand new garden this spring, huge, with 4 very large garden beds that are about 5 feet by 16 feet.
Mm-hmm.
And they range from about 1 foot to almost 2 feet in height. And we filled it up with first a layer of straw and then some soil that my husband got for a really good deal.
Mm-hmm.
But nothing is really growing. We filled it up with all kinds of vegetables and plants.
Are any weeds growing?
I thought it was the frost. I planted a few things too soon.
Do you have any weeds growing?
No. Well, yeah, little teeny ones, but I'm pretty quick at plucking them out.
Okay. So something is growing in the soil. It's not, the soil isn't
But I'm wondering,
toxic.
My mom always warned me about cheap soil, this kind of stuff that's mixed with bark mulch and has dyes added to it. And I'm concerned that it's the bad soil.
Well, it could be. You counteract that by adding huge quantities of organic matter and compost. And so that's the remedy, because soils, there's two general aspects to soil. There's the mineral content, which is just sand, silt, and clay, which has minerals in it, which are good for plants, but there's very little nitrogen available there. So that's one part of it. The other part of it is the actual nitrogen and the micronutrient levels, which often are associated with the compost. And so when we're adding the compost in there, it takes a lot of compost. When we're doing like a lawn or something, we can do 5% compost in there, and the lawn is plenty happy with that. But in the vegetable garden, we need to be more like 40 to 50% compost in the vegetable garden, which is much higher levels. Do you think you're in that range? Or?
It did come, it was a dump truck load, and it came almost half manure, like half of this.
And what
soil.
kind of manure would you have?
I think it was cow.
It's got this text.
Cow, not horse, right?
I think it was cow.
Yeah, so horse manures are known to have potentially have some chemicals in them, so you have to be really careful if you do have that type of a situation going on. So, but then usually we see distorted plant growth. It's not that they're not growing; they grow a little bit, but then they tend to distort, so the leaves get all kind of weird and curly and bubbly and misshapen.
Yeah. Sylvia, are you in Kelowna area, or are you?
The Twin Lakes area, a little higher up elevation.
Mm-hmm. Well, what I was wondering was if you could bring me a bucket of that soil and I could have a look at it.
Oh.
And pictures of the plants, too, because you can tell by looking at plants whether they're nutrient deficient or if they're having irrigation issues. Just remember, in the heat, if you're experiencing hot weather, then, it's a daily watering routine.
Yeah.
So, and that water, the key to happy soil for vegetable gardens is generally starting with a sandy base soil.
Yeah.
And so that it has free draining ability, and like I say, compost. So,
Okay.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I mean, if the soil is getting hard, you want to think about that. But I'd like to see a sample of it. I mean, that would help help me help you a little bit more than, because you've had experience gardening before. The whole thing is with raised gardens, you're sort of halfway in between that gardening in the ground and gardening in containers. It's a little it's got a little bit of each going on, It's not the same as gardening in the ground, so you do need a different soil for it, but it's not the same as container growing necessarily. I was using this Nature's Gold soil this year for my for the tiny homes that we did the gardens for, and also for my daughter and son-in-law, and those gardens are just thriving in this soil, and it's a nice mix. But as you say, sometimes if you kind of go on the trying to save a few bucks, it may not be the best thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. I'll try and I'll email you to try and make arrangements maybe to bring you the soil.
Absolutely. I'd like to see it, and then I can give you a lot better information if I can just feel it. Okay?
Okay. Thank you,
dear. Okay.
Have a good day.
Thanks for
You
calling.
too. Bye-bye now. Yeah, it's soil is everything, isn't it? We've got
sure is.
we got Maureen joining us. Good morning, Maureen.
Oh, good morning, guys.
Morning.
I tuned in just when you were talking about a blossom end rot on tomatoes, and I really had that last year, and it was kind of frustrating. But I do have a spray bottle that I put a calcium tablet in last year, and I remember spraying it. I guess now is the time to get that going again.
Oh, yeah. You get it on right away, because you just don't want the plant to be forming, bad cells from the point when that fruit starts growing all the way through to its fruition. You need to be applying it regularly, because one application doesn't do it. It needs to have it multiple times, and then making sure you get it right onto the fruit, and just coating the whole plant top to bottom. So it would take multiple of these tablets. You'd need to crush them up and put it into the water and shake it up rapidly.
Several, like two or three of them in a
Yeah,
1 liter.
it certainly doesn't hurt, because it's not an expensive thing to do, but it certainly works. Foliar feeding with calcium is the answer to blossom end rot.
Do I also spray it? I've got some tomatoes forming and some just flowers, and so they're just starting. Spray the whole entire plant, or just the flowers and the
everything. I would just do everything. Yeah,
because you want
it. Yeah, and then remember to do your zucchinis as well if you have zucchinis.
I don't have any zucchinis.
Zucchinis are prone to the same problem.
Idea.
Yeah.
I do have pumpkins, though. Maybe I should do it to the pumpkins.
Oh, absolutely.
Okay, and then another very, very quick question. I have raspberries that are finally producing. Don't know what kind they are, but there's a whole bunch on there, but they're very small.
Yeah.
So wondered what fertilizer, like I didn't put Oco-Grow on there. I don't know if I should or shouldn't. And what fertilizer would you recommend for next year, for just even to put on now?
Raspberries respond to almost any kind of fertilizer, but something that's sort of designed for vegetables. So vegetables and fruits. And, the key with nice raspberries is having steady water supply. Because they bounce right up and get going once they have water, and but it is a bit strange, like that they haven't produced anything up until this point.
Last year I don't think I got any until fall, and then I got a few, and they were pretty good. But now they're just loaded with all these small berries, and I thought, well, that's better than nothing, I guess. But
could be an everbearing variety. It sounds like it. The everbearing ones, what they'll do is if they have old foliage from last year, they'll produce a crop a bit earlier. Usually it's in June or in early July. And then that crop, there'll be new growth that shoots up while that's fruiting, and that new growth will come up and fruit in the fall. And so that's what they call everbearing. It's sort of like summer and fall. And June-bearing only do it in around the end of June, and that's it.
Okay. Well, I know they're not June-bearing because these things have been, I know that I've had berries in the fall, but not that many. But should I be trimming any branches that are producing right now?
Well, after they're you get as much fruit off them as you can, and then usually after fruiting, those branches will be stunted, and you'll see that they'll start to die. after they're fruiting, so you can go in and snip them out and just keep those nice, healthy new shoots, because that's going to be your fall crop. And so that is the one thing with everbearing, is that the early crop, the first crop that comes on, is small.
Okay, there you go.
The
That's
fall ones are bigger. So just
sometimes they're called fall-bearing raspberry.
Yeah,
but
that's what I think that's what I do have, and I didn't trim them because I didn't have a clue what to trim and when to trim, so I just let them go this year, and now I've got all these little tiny berries. So I'll trim them as I go and just try to pick the ones I have, I guess.
Yeah, any ones that are fruiting now are the ones you're going to snip out. Let's put it that way. But then anything that's new, that's new this year, that's going to be the late bigger berries.
Okay, well, thank you. I'm looking forward to that, and thank you for your help.
Oh, you're very welcome. Thanks for the call.
Thanks for calling.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
And, I talked to a raspberry grower many years ago, and he says, hey, on June-bearing raspberries, first thing in the spring, mow them. You
Not
mow
June-bearing.
them. Or not June-bearing, everbearing.
Yeah.
You mow them. And with the June-bearing, of course, you look for last year's nice new growth, and that's going to produce this year. We're going to take a short break, and we will be back with The Garden Show after this short break. We're back with you with the Garden Show. It's a beautiful Saturday morning here in the Okanagan, and I'm sure it's a beautiful right across the listening audience. It's great gardening weather. It's time to do all sorts of things in the garden, and that's what Ken and I are talking about, of course. I have had really good success pruning my grapes and kiwis. I mentioned this last week, but I'm just over the top excitement of how I've learned after being so old and been pruning grapes and kiwis all my life practically. I'm learning something that summer pruning, Ted, my buddy Ted says, if in doubt, prune it out. And that's what I've been doing. And I've got a crop of kiwis this year and a crop of grapes that is just incredible. And so I'm really, really enjoying that. And it's amazing how the kiwi will grow 1.5 to 2 feet in about 2 days. It's amazing. Those new shoots.
Super
crazy.
Fast, yeah.
Yep. You bet. We're going to go to the phone lines now. Eileen is on line 1. Good morning, Eileen.
Hi, good morning. I have a question about our Sweet 100 tomato. It says outrageous on the tag.
Right.
Anyway, it's growing about 4 feet tall, and there are blossoms on it all over, but it's just so spindly and tall. So is it lacking something?
You know what? It could be one of two things. I had some that I had purchased specific varieties, and then the one plant just kept growing and growing and growing. It got to be huge and spindly and skinny, and then when the fruit came on, the fruit was like the size of a pea, and there was like millions and millions of these little fruits which had no flavor, and it was like what it seemed to be was some sort of a, I don't know, it just like it was a wrong. The seed was wrong. Like either it cross-pollinated incorrectly, something went wrong. So that particular plant was bad, and it just didn't amount to anything, even though it was a good variety. But I also, this year, I have many cherry tomatoes as well, and they're coming on quite well, and they do get quite large compared to other tomatoes, so they need support. But they should be flowering, and then right now with these temperatures we're having, where are you located?
In Victoria.
In Victoria. So you're not quite getting the heat that we're getting, but as soon as the nighttime temperatures come up and it gets quite nice and toasty, meaning, nighttime temperatures of about, say, 15 degrees or so Celsius, then what that will do is that'll stimulate them to set fruit quite rapidly, and then you should be fine. So, the few of the general things, fertilizing regularly, and getting some warmer temperatures is super helpful, and then hoping that you're getting the actual variety that you wanted to initially,
right,
so that it actually produces what it's supposed to.
Yeah. Now, Eileen, you say it's tall and spindly. How are you supporting it?
Oh, we have kind of a big tomato cage, and then some stakes up.
Is it getting full day of sun?
Yes.
Because that's
Yes,
one of the things that would cause it to be a little spindly, is if it wasn't getting as much sun.
Yeah, no, it does. It's in a pot, and it does get good sun.
Okay. And when you're fertilizing, what is the fertilizer you're using? Is it?
I was just using 686.
Well, 686, that should be fine. That's an old variety. That's an old
Is
elephant
that a
brand.
granular?
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so you might try switching out to maybe a water-soluble type fertilizer, like a Miracle Grow. Because you're in a pot, that's a factor. Do you using good quality potting soil, or did you make soil, or do you know?
No, we bought new soil this year, new potting soil.
Oh, it should be good.
What's that variety again? What did this say on the tag?
It says Outrageous Sweet 100 Tomato.
Outrageous.
Good name.
And it says sweet. Vancouver Island grown.
There you go. Yeah, because Sweet 100s is a variety we grow. We also grew one called Sweet Million. And the one that I've grown this year, which I'm quite pleased with, is called Sun Dipper. Sun Dipper. It's a little pear-shaped tomato.
Oh, yes. Mm-hmm.
And I guess they call it that because you can grab the neck of the tomato, dip it, and then put it in the mouth, like it's a sun dipper. It's a dipper. And I'm quite pleased with them so far. They're just starting to ripen up now. I'm starting to get my first sun dipper tomatoes. And now I'll see if they compare at all with those beauties that we had last year
we lost the name of them.
Yeah, and that variety that I got from Ross this year, the seed, he sort of stabbed in the dark and thought he was giving me the right seed. It's not the right seed. The tomato is not the same. So anyway, it's with thousands and thousands of varieties of tomatoes out there, once you find one that works well for you, you want to do it. But try Sun Dipper. It's a good one.
Yeah. Okay. That's for next year.
Yeah. There you go.
Thank you then.
Thanks for the call, Eileen. Appreciate it.
Listen. Bye now.
Bye now. Yeah, it's incredible the amount of tomatoes that are grown out there. We used to grow probably 75 varieties in our garden center because people and there was one from Stokes called Early Red Chief. And Mom would just, on the tag, she just put ERC, Early Red Chief. And man, we sold those tomatoes and everybody came back. They wanted them again.
Yeah.
And so once you start them, and then they dropped it. Out of the blue, they dropped it. So it's a regional thing, like
and there's so many, like you say, there's literally thousands and thousands of types.
Oh yeah. Faye is joining us. Good morning, Faye.
Morning. I'm glad to talk to you.
Well, thanks for calling.
Yeah, thanks for calling.
I have kind of a garden problem. I have 2 rain barrels. My brother-in-law got these large blue barrels from the winery when he retired, and he's been retired a while. Now, during this spring, we've had a fair amount of water that came off our roof. And one barrel I covered to keep the water clear, and it's great. But the other one, the barrel was filled right to the top with water, and the birds have come to the edge of the barrel and been drinking from it. But lately, I've noticed that there's a green scum on this, and the birds, of course, have been around. So I was just wondering, any process I can use to clear that up?
Yeah, it's
normal.
Just algae growing. And so sometimes when the birds do come in, the birds are also bathing in other puddles of water, so they often carry algae with them. And so when they do get into water, they'll spread those little pieces of algae in there, and then they start to grow. There really isn't much you can do about that, and you don't really need to do much about it, as long as it's ideally not a bad type of algae. Like right now, where are you located?
In Rutland.
You're in the Okanagan, yeah. So in the Okanagan, we do have some blue-green algae that's happening in the waters, and it's not a very good thing. It's quite bad, and it's possible, that again a bird could go and dance in the lake and then come and dance in there, and you get the same thing. But it wouldn't be a bad idea maybe to try covering it. It's a combination of water, nutrients, and light.
Sunlight. Yeah.
And so, by putting the lid on it, maybe not a bad idea.
Well, I was actually keeping the lid off so the birds could get a drink.
Right.
Because the barrel's really large, so they can't go swimming in it, but they can parch on the edge and drink from it.
Sure.
But they haven't lately because, I guess, of the green scum.
Right. Here's the deal, too. I have a bucket. It's an old ice cream bucket. and I use it in the greenhouse for soaking my orchids. I'll have this with plain water, and I just dip the orchid in there and let it drink, and then I take the orchid back out. And once in a while, I let that bucket sit on the bench in the greenhouse, and it doesn't take too long before that green algae starts growing. It's just a normal kind of a thing when you have standing water, and whether it's fertilized water or not fertilized water, it still gets that green algae growing in there, and it doesn't seem to do any harm. Although I always keep that clean before I put my orchids back in there. Yeah. I don't think it's an issue other than the fact that.
It looks awful.
Yeah.
You can skim it off for sure. You can use, a mesh or a sieve to skim it off, or like a pool skimmer. But it's probably going to keep coming back.
Okay. Yeah. Well, I'll cover it, and I'll try and find something else for the birds.
What we use in our little fountain and in our bird bath, or not our bird bath. We've got a bird bath there. What we do is we use a little bit of H2O2, hydrogen peroxide, in the water, and that really seems to keep things nice and clean.
Well, this is a pretty big barrel, so I don't think I have more than a bottle worth of hydrogen peroxide. But I'll try skimming it and see if that clears it up, and put the cover back on.
Okay,
yeah. Well, thank you both very much for this.
Oh, you're very welcome. Thanks for the call.
Thanks for calling.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
You betcha. Yeah, it's a normal process. It's interesting. We still do go up to a lake called Salmon Lake, and it's the only lake I've ever been to. There's an algae bloom that happens in the lake, and these little tiny bits of algae happening. And it seems that's when the fish are biting the best, is when this algae is blooming.
And it keeps getting stuck on your line when you're trolling.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Well, yeah, but if you're fly fishing like you should
fishing.
be. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, that's right. Yeah. We used to drag a fly there, didn't we?
Yeah.
We used to, pull one. Yeah.
You bet.
Cool.
Anyway, we're going to take another short break. At the bottom of the hour here, we've got another half hour of Garden Show left. Give us a call, 250-862-2525 to get through locally here in Kelowna. 1-888-780-4273. It's a free call from Victoria, Penticton, anywhere online. We'll be back with the Garden Show after this short break. We've talked about this quite a bit this spring, the various bits of damage going on in the gardens from that January freeze that we had, which was a bit of something very different, having that mild temperatures, and then all of a sudden down in the Okanagan down to 29 below. It also was cold as well in Victoria. Not as cold, but it's all relative, And so, we talked about all this damage. I'll tell you, my grandiflora magnolia, you got to come and see it, Ken. Mm-hmm. It's loaded with blooms this year, even though I had to cut 2/3 of the tree away because it died.
Yeah.
But the part that's remaining, it's almost like it wants to catch up and say, hey,
Well, if you think about it, if you chop off 2/3 of the top of the tree, the root system is still 100%.
Yep.
So it's going to push up with all that energy and nutrient, feeding that what's left, and it's sort of having an excess amount of water and nutrients, because the root system is bigger than the top. Yeah. And so, it's a unique situation, and sounds really exciting that it's blooming so nicely.
Quite pleased with it. Quite pleased, and it's putting on nice new foliage. All those poor leaves that got damaged over the winter are now dropping. That's the one part about having an evergreen magnolia, the southern Magnolia grandiflora. They do drop the leaves throughout the season, and it can be somewhat of a chore to tidy things up, but they're sure worth it, because those nice big white blossoms that have such a fragrance. You walk by the tree, and when it's in full bloom like this, the fragrance is incredible. Really enjoying that. And around the rest of the yard, I've got tomatoes planted, and I've got and I encourage people that if they want, I just put out a new sheet on supporting tomatoes with using the old way that we used to support tomatoes in the greenhouse on twine and all these little clips that we can buy nowadays. And what a way. Keeps them off the ground, keeps them up in the air. You got to have something for them to hang on. You have to have an overhead bar or an overhead wire or something. But, man, it's the way to go. I mean, it keeps them off the ground. And what I've done is I've got so many varieties. I've got 15 different varieties of tomatoes growing.
Wow.
And no, you say, well, how can you use all those tomatoes? Well, I don't let them all grow to fruition. I trim them. I take the suckers out. I don't let them get so that there's, so many pounds of tomatoes. I don't know what to do with them. But I want to find out the varieties that I want to grow in the future and varieties that I can recommend. And my cousin Ross McLeod, he brings in seed from Ukraine. Actually, a lot of tomato seeds from this company in Ukraine. And so I've got about 6 or 8 varieties of that growing, and I keep them trimmed down so that they're not going wild and producing crazily. And but I also have some of the tried and true varieties that I've grown for years. The beefsteak, and I got one from Teresa Hodge this year, Starfire, and that's a variety, Ken, that we used to grow. Lots of people love Starfire, and I now know why they like it. The habit of the plant, it's a determinate plant, and the habit is just like a little bush. And I've got it supported with a nice tomato. That's the one tomato plant that I haven't supported by hanging from a string, because it's a determinate plant, and it's all coming on at once, and it's a bush, and it's supported by this tomato support.
Right, is that something that sounds like that one could grow in a container quite nicely?
Well, yeah, and this one is in a container.
So Starfire.
Yeah, I've only got about 5 plants in the ground. All the rest are in containers.
Right. Yeah, they seem to sort of like growing in containers due to the added warmth, I think, that comes through to the roots, that nice warm soil being above ground. And that might be something for our coastal listeners to try, as well as if you have plants in the ground and they're kind of slow and not really getting going, that you might try a few in containers and just, observe the difference.
Yep, they like to have, they're tropical.
Yeah.
They are a tropical plant.
They love the heat, that's for sure. A little greenhouse really pays off in that case.
Yeah, I've got 3 cucumber plants in my greenhouse, and they're going to be just loaded with cukes. They're Carmens, so they're greenhouse tomato or
nice.
Cucumber.
Instead of me growing cucumbers, I should just come and visit you more often.
We put them out on the curb. We put cucumbers out on the curb. We got so many cucumbers.
You're gonna have a cucumber factory.
That's right. And late March, early April, I put in a row of carrots and a row of green onions, and I just harvested them now, and they're looking great. So I'm putting more of that in, and I'm going to try and, as I say, I'm going to even try and do some Brussels sprouts. See what happens.
Right.
Hey, that's what gardening's about. That's what I've enjoyed now that I don't do as much of my consulting and working as much as I have. I'm really enjoying playing around the garden and experimenting with things, and that's what you do. That's what Elaine Cameron was doing back in 1954. Her diary states that she's been working away. This is now we're at the 13th. Tomorrow is our wedding anniversary. 51 years tomorrow. Ken.
Wow.
51 years of marital bliss.
Yeah.
Anyway, on the 13th of January or July, she was. Not in January, we're in July. Both start with J's. She cut the sunken lawn. She watered and sprayed her broad beans and Michaelmas daisies and chrysanthemums. I don't know what she sprayed with, but in those days it was crazy stuff they used to use.
Yeah.
On July 14th, our anniversary date, cut all the edges in the big garden, got sacks ready for irrigation. Now, sax. It's not the tenor, alto, soprano sax.
No,
this is these are sax as in SACKS, the sax, like gunny sax.
Yeah,
and she would put the sax out and then put the hose inside that, and it worked just like a water breaker.
Yeah,
and so then she'd flood the garden with that.
That was the original water breaker.
Yeah, we have actually a nice one that we use too to just put in the bed. It's one of the ways you can water a bed if you've got a bed and you don't want to be constantly putting your irrigation on or whatever, and you want to just, it was an area that's dry that needs a good soaking, put that water breaker in there and just let it flood a little bit, and you got her done. Now, what's a sand poppy? I don't know. She says she's cut off sand poppies and odds and ends, and then watering the sunken garden, begonias. She doesn't say too much about it. It's all for her benefit, because the next year she'll be able to look back. And that's what the idea of having a bit of a diary in your garden, writing down some things that go on every day. I do that in the greenhouse. I'm not as good at it as Elaine, because I miss a few days once in a while. I'm out there doing something every day. Do I write it down? Probably not. But when I'm doing something major, like planting a row of seeds in the garden, or transplanting my early seedlings into pots, or just doing some pruning, I'll write those things down. But I don't do it every day like Elaine did, and it was very cool to have that diary that she put together over the years, and it's interesting for me too, because it was just down the road from where we live, where we had our nursery, and often you'd hear her see her writing down, went to Burnett's and picked up my tomatoes or my cucumbers or whatever, and she had a little greenhouse, but she didn't grow everything herself. It's amazing this year with our greenhouse, Ken. I've rarely gone into the garden centers. I have really grown a lot of stuff in that little greenhouse this year. It's been fabulous.
Yeah, having that greenhouse, it extends the season, but it's just having control over the environment makes a huge difference on these plants. Plants are very temperature sensitive, and when you start warming up the nights a little bit and buffering, in the daytime the sun comes out and it gets nice and toasty in there. A greenhouse is just a little piece of heaven, and the plants, they just respond. It's just unbelievable what you can do with a small greenhouse, and extending the seasons on both ends, really, of the year. You know, it's really nice.
I've seen a lot of greenhouses that are storage sheds.
Yeah, it's hard to keep them going in the summertime, but and that was
magic. You
were right away. You didn't even bother building it without your cooling pads.
Cooling system,
and that's like a swamp cooler that when you have a ventilation fan that blows out and it pulls the air through the swamp cooler, and that makes a huge difference.
Yeah, I can keep it in our real hot weather like this. I can keep it under 40 degrees. It's like 38 degrees in the greenhouse.
Degrees Celsius,
which is a nice warm temperature for a lot of my succulents and tropical plant selections.
And then with the use of shade cloth.
Shade cloth is a great
super
thing.
useful, yeah.
I haven't been using shade cloth. I've just been using my thing. One of the tragedies that I had last year, or a couple of years, it was actually about 3 years ago, to get the shade cloth on, I would tie a rock or something hard into a piece in a line and throw it over the greenhouse, right? And then pull the shade cloth over.
Yeah.
Right? Well, that's fine and dandy if you throw it far enough.
You can throw.
I didn't.
Ouch.
I went and smashed one of my windows in the greenhouse, and glass windows, and so Donna said, "Oh, don't do that again." I said, "Oh, yeah, it's the first time that's ever happened." So second time in a row, I threw the thing over, smashed another glass. So I haven't put a shade cloth on since then. I had to repair those lines. Anyway, but the shade cloth is ideal, but in conjunction with the cooling system I have, that shade cloth would be ideal. As a matter of fact, I may even somehow, with sticks or something, push some shade cloth over top.
Yeah, throw the string over and then pull the string.
Yeah, but it catches on things. Shade cloth is like that.
But
But anyway,
be a pain.
it's a good thing. Shade cloth, and then the insect cloth that you have, the insect prevention to stop the thing. Now, I got to tell you, Ken, I don't know what it is about my neck of the woods, but I don't get onion maggots.
Mm-hmm. It's probably not too many. Maybe not too many people growing out there. Yeah, I don't know. At my place, it's just standard. You couldn't grow an onion without onion maggots. Yeah. Don't know why.
I think once they do come in, I think that'd be it. Now, but one of the things a person can do with all sorts of plants, like for instance, cherry fruit fly. is a big deal. Let's talk about that when we come back. We're going to have to take a short break, but let's talk about what you can do sometimes, quote, organically or non-chemically to prevent some of these things. And one of them is the fallow system. In other words, don't grow it for a year or two. Anyway, we'll talk about that when we come back with more of The Garden Show after this short break. We're back with you on a beautiful Saturday morning. I can't tell you how I enjoy this. Everybody's complaining about the heat in the Okanagan. I mean, we were up to 38 yesterday or 39 or a couple of days ago. And people, the heat. And I go, I was born here. I'm an Okanaganite, and I love the dry heat. Now, if you're out slugging, digging holes or something in the dry heat,
all day, 8 hours,
not as much fun.
Yeah.
Got to keep drinking that water and whatever. But the heat itself is it reminds me of my youth. I mean, when we were young, we'd get in our bathing suits from June when we got out of school. We would live in our bathing suits all summer long, and we would be wearing our flip-flops. We used to call them thongs. They're not thongs anymore. They're flip-flops.
Yeah. Yeah,
and,
it used to be.
Yeah. Anyway,
things have changed.
We would live in the water. We'd go down to the lake and whatnot. It was great, and this kind of reminds me of that when we have this nice warm weather.
Yeah.
And when people complain about it, I think, well, what about in the wintertime when it was freezing? Aren't you kind of glad we got some heat now? I mean, that's what we need.
Yeah, it is nice, but you just don't want to be getting burned to a crisp out there. The UV ratings are the things you want to watch, and I'm sure we're up to 10 or so here in the Okanagan, and that's pretty extreme. So you got to watch that. That's where you burn in 8 minutes or something.
Right, and some people are more prone to that. My daughter Lisa, she's got quite light skin, redhead, and she's very prone to burning. She can turn bright red, and she's got to be careful with that. And myself, I haven't had that issue all my life. I just get darker and darker and darker, but however, my head is not as clean looking. I got a buddy, a good friend of mine, who all his life has been wearing a toupee. And he now has decided this is silly. Why wear a toupee? It's hot in the summer, and why, And here he is. He's up close to 80 years old, and he stopped wearing his toupee, and he's got a head that looks like he's 40. It's clean. It hasn't got one sunspot on it.
There you go.
My head's so full of sunspots and stuff because I haven't taken care of that sort of thing. But it's interesting to see my buddy whose head is perfect.
Yeah, it's the sun that causes so many issues with your skin. And,
absolutely. And,
including, wrinkling and all that stuff,
And worse.
Yeah.
But it also causes issues with certain plants out there. Lots of sunburn going on. You can sure separates the men from the boys when it comes to the sun. When you get the sun that we're getting right now in the Okanagan. Yeah,
you got to be. This is more intense. It's more intense than I think it has been in the past. Every year it seems to get a little bit more intense. But anyway, what you do is. Just remember that especially when you're moving plants from inside to outside, or moving them from a greenhouse outside, or from anywhere indoors, is not even going to be remotely close to the intensity of the sun once you get them outside. So going directly into that bright light is an issue, and it will burn them up. So you start them in the shade, and you gradually move them a little bit each day closer, or just very short period of time, getting a little bit of direct light, and gradually integrating them. Plants have a sunscreen that's built into their system, a chemical, but the chemical is not there when it's grown in lower light.
Right.
And the epidermis as well, which is the upper layer of the leaf, is also a little bit thinner to allow extra light to come through. And so, it's one of these things that the plants will develop their own sunscreen internally over time, but it takes weeks. It can be 2 to 3 weeks for it to adapt. And once those chemicals build up in the leaf, then it's able to withstand the direct sunlight. But it takes time. Take your time. Don't be rushing it. And we were just talking about shade cloth, using shade cloth for your vegetables in the afternoon. Like here in the hot Okanagan, it's becoming a necessity to use that, some shade cloth over your vegetables in the afternoons especially. But in coastal areas, you may not require that, but you just watch for that sunburn, which is what you talked about off the top of the show, is watching for those white spots that show up on the sides of peppers or the sides of zucchinis or the sides of tomatoes.
And Ken, some plants, even though they're supposed to be used to the hot sun, I've got a euphorbia called the Jewel of Madagascar, and I'd imagine it grows in full sun in Madagascar, but very more humid than the Okanagan. The Okanagan is a dry heat. And these leaves on this Madagascar, Jewel of Madagascar, they are burning. And I've had to move it into a semi-shaded area. So it's not just it's conditions. I mean, we talk about plants and their natural environment, okay? And we duplicate a natural dry desert environment here in the Okanagan. So that's what does the best. Cactus and succulents and things like that just love the environment here in the Okanagan. Some of the plants that are native to warm areas like Madagascar. Madagascar is very moist. It's very humid in Madagascar, and so they don't have the same heat as us. And so you have to adjust. You have to. You've often said, Ken, over the years, when somebody says, "Well, how do I look after this?" You find out where the plant is native to, what conditions, soil conditions, air conditions, sun, shade, whatever, and humidity. And try and duplicate that in our area to make those plants thrive.
Yeah, and it's much easier when you're in a climate that's similar to where those plants came from originally. But it's still doable with research. You can figure out what to do or what not to do, which is often more important is what not to do.
Elevation is another thing, too, like alpine plants that grow native in our alpine areas up in the Rockies and whatnot. To grow them where we live right now, down in the lower areas, you have to adjust, and sometimes it's just not possible to do it. We got about a minute left before we have to leave you, folks. We've enjoyed being here every Saturday morning. It is a thick of gardening season right now. And if you have any issues or questions, write them down. Get to us. We'll be back here again next week. So keep that in mind. We are enjoying doing this every week. And Ken and I, as soon as we're through the show, of course, we run. I notice there's a call coming in, and what we probably will have to do there is answer that call off the air, which we will definitely do for you. And, because we're right close to that time when we've got to say goodbye.
Yeah.
And we've got our tips and weeks, plants of the week, and Shy-Go moment before we leave. We do that every week for you.
Every show. Yeah.
Every show.
You betcha. All righty. Well, there we are.
Yep. Okay. Well, tad early, but we're going to do it now. This is the tips and plants of the week. My tip of the week is if you've got a Cotinus cogrigia, which is the smoke tree, or the smoke tree, that is something that's very beautiful. But when those blooms are done, it's wise to clip them off because not only are they kind of messy, but they do spread seeds around, and you got the little smoke trees growing up all over the place. My plant of the week is the ligularia. The rocket. The dentata is another ligularia. It's beautiful, but the rocket is taller, smaller leaf, and a beautiful, right now, yellow flower that's growing in the Okanagan very nicely. Shade plant.
Yeah, very nice plant indeed. All right, I also have a tip and a plant. My tip of the week is that watering so much in this heat is something that you must do, but it's also washing out nutrients from the soil. So if you're going to be watering more, you'll also need to be feeding more. And I often recommend to feed a small amount in each watering during hot weather, and it really helps keep those plants at their peak performance. My plant of the week this week was the Yucca filamentosa, the yucca plant or Adam's needle. Very, very durable, hot, desert-style plant and produces some beautiful blooms. And they're blooming right now with their 6-foot-high candelabra of beautiful flowers, looking great in the gardens right now. Not a deer-resistant plant, surprisingly. The deer will eat those leaves, but they're sure durable other than that, that's for sure. Drought-tolerant. All right, that's my tips and plants for this week. Remember to check growercoach.com and Grower Coach on YouTube.
Ken and I had the privilege of seeing Dr. Alex Shigo, the father of modern arboriculture, speak in person. We were very privileged to do that. It wasn't long before he passed away. And his quote of the week this week, Shigo quote, is, "You cannot move to a higher comfort level without first passing through a level of discomfort." There you have it. We'll see you next week with more of The Garden Show.